Welcome to the Erasmus Foundation podcast. My name is Paul Nugent. Are you looking for answers to life and its meaning? Then this may well be the very podcast you need to listen to. In a series of podcasts, we are going to look at the difficult questions of life and apply spiritual knowledge to find out the answers. Hello. Today we are going to talk about the subject of bereavement, a very important subject that affects the majority of us sometime in our life. And today we have Julia, Rosina and Marie to talk to us about this and for us to discuss it amongst ourselves. And so, Rosina, let's start with you. The word bereavement, what does that mean to you?
I would like to share my experience of bereavement, in particular relationship to suicide, because my younger sister, when she was 19, took her own life. Now, at the time, I was about 30. I remember when my mother phoned me, it was 8:30 in the morning. She told me that my sister had died. And I remember thinking, please tell me that it's an accident and not suicide. Now, I don't know why that went through my head. Went through very quickly. But of course, it was that she had taken her own life. Now, I was in a state of shock, as you can imagine. And it was 8:30 in the morning, like I said, and I was on my way to work. So I just continued doing what I was going to do because I couldn't think of what else to do. And it wasn't until I got to work, when I told somebody at work, that they said to me, well, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be at work. But I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't organize myself in any way at all. And I needed help to do that initially. Now, finally, obviously, I went home, and not only was I having to deal with my own grief, but also that of the rest of my family. But also the other thing that made a huge impression on me was the next day we went to see in the mortuary chapel. Now, I'd never seen a dead person before. And here was my younger sister, 19, lying on this cold slab. And I remember thinking at the time, my life is not going to be the same. It's just not going to be the same after this. It couldn't be the same after it. And I also felt at the time that I was not only facing the mortality of my sister, but in some strange sense, I was also facing my own mortality. And with that came a lot of questions. I remember picking my sister up at 2 days old, and all of a sudden she's not there. All there was a shell. Now, I kept asking myself the question, why? Why? And I didn't seem to be able to find any answers. And one of the people I spoke to was a priest. Now, please, can I say that if anybody's listening to this and they are Christian and their faith gives them comfort at times like this, then please, hold on to it, because I'm not saying this because I'm criticizing anybody's faith, but the priest did not give me the answers really that I was looking for. In fact, it gave me more questions. And one of the biggest questions that I had really related to the fact that I thought that if there was a God, it didn't seem just to me that some people had long lives, long, happy lives, and other people didn't. And their lives, for whatever reason, was cut short. So after a little while, and after asking all of these questions, I remember I was getting into a bath, and I wasn't thinking of my sister or anything. I was just getting into a bath. And suddenly, I'm not a clairvoyant, but it was like I was being shown this map. And on this map, all these things were kind of like happening, and there were links to, there was kind of like a grid, and that everything was connected to everything. And what I was being shown was that everything has a purpose, and there was a reason for everything. And what was happening in my life, and the death of my little sister, there was meaning and a purpose to that. Although at the time I didn't understand that, there was. Now, this gave me a huge amount of comfort. And at the same time, however, I have to say that I also did think, oh goodness, Rosina, are you going completely mad? I mean, because I'd not had an experience like this before in this way. And I was told about the foundation. It was called the Fellowship of Erasmus in those days. And I decided that I would go along there and check this out, see if there were, if there was anything in it. And I did. And I knew when I asked the question, they were talking at that time about the First Iraq War. And I just asked the question whether there was a higher purpose to these things happening, and these things that happened, and these events that happened in our lives. And of course, the answer was yes. And I think the other thing that was central to helping me to deal with this event that happened in my life was reincarnation, and the understanding that this is only one life we have, and we have many. And together with the fact that we also have a tapestry, that we take a life, we know exactly how we're going to die. And this was also incredibly important for me to hear this, because one of the things I felt quite strongly, actually, and I think this would probably resonate with a lot of people who've also been through this, is that you feel a dreadful sense of guilt. You feel like you perhaps should have done something, or could have done something. You could have done something to stop it from happening. And that really does weigh quite heavily. I have to say, I didn't really feel anger. My overwhelming feeling was guilt. So by understanding that we have a tapestry, that we know how we are going to go home, and that suicide is just one of the ways in which we do go home, that just lifted a huge weight off my shoulders, because I thought to myself, well, therefore there was nothing that I could have done. That was her tapestry. And equally, it was in my tapestry that I should experience such a thing. I want to just finish by saying that this took me on a road of self-discovery, which I am eternally grateful for. Or whether I would have done it without my sister taking her life, I don't know. But it certainly did set me on that path. And now, when I look back, and that was 30 years ago, I think if someone said to me, what was the worst thing that happened to you in your life? I would say my sister's death. But if they said, well, what was the best thing that happened in your life? I would have to say my sister's death. So for me, it was, I can't say, or perhaps I could say then, because then I would have said that it was a negative experience. But that negative experience really transformed my life into something very positive.
Thank you. So, Marie, most people in their lives find bereavement somewhere. Someone close to them dies, or something happens in their life. They get a sense of grief. And most of us, if not all of us, experience that, don't we?
Of course, of course. I mean, after all, we are in a university of life. So we do experience birth, taking a life, and also death. We all experience death. At some stage in our life, we experience death. The loss of someone that is dear to us. And I must say, I've got also to involve pets. We talk in the human, of course, but also when we lose a pet who has been very close to us, giving all their loyalty, that is quite important as well. When I was 15 years old, I was working I was not supposed to be working, but I knew the director of the hospital, and he placed me, it was a holiday placement, in pediatry. And, within a couple of weeks, I experienced the death of a very, very young child. And it was very strange because at first I thought that child was sleeping until, we had the glass windows on the top, not directly at the same level of the ward. Or in fact, they were individual rooms, but higher, so like it going on a balcony, if you like. And the parents were upset. And this is when I realized, no, that baby is actually gone. It died. And I didn't feel the emotion for the baby. I felt it for the parents. So that was my very first experience at 15. I was working at a young age when I first started nursing in intensive care unit. The patients were very, very ill. In fact, many of them near death. And there were 4 gentlemen in one section of the ward. When I came back the following morning, they're all gone home. 4 of them had died during the night. And that was hard because knowing those patients so well, it really came home. I didn't understand it. I took my sorrow in a way within. I couldn't express anything to other people. They were my very first experience of hospital death. I lost my parents. They were elderly as well, and cancer and so on. So I lived that there. But when I came into the foundation, it really enlightened my thought. I know that when we're born, we have an individual tapestry. That is something that I can understand and I can go along with it. I accept. When there is a death, I automatically have acceptance of it. It makes it easier in a way. When you accept, you can actually understand what has gone on and figure it out a little bit more clearly. And of course, the most important is the reincarnation. Now, that is something I learned at the foundation, and I'm very grateful. I very often think about this reincarnation. It's so helpful. Rather than died, I very seldom actually use that expression now. I say it's gone home. It is a joy to go home. You're going to meet your friends, you're going to meet your family. It's a joyful moment. And that's what I'd like to remind myself of. It is a joyful moment going home. I'm hoping that many people are going to listen to our podcast. That should be helping a lot of people. It is, of course, that it is very difficult to accept for some, but once it's explained, going home and the joy of going home, it should give a little bit of peace to someone.
Thank you, Marie. Now, Julia, this is the sad side of death, isn't it? The people left behind. That's the real issue of grief. The people that leave us and go home are very, very happy about the experience. It's very positive experience because they've shed the mortal coil, as it were, and have got the freedom of living at home. And I just wonder how you would like to look at the other side of the coin from bereavement.
Yes. Well, of course, as you say, it is a time of joy at home. It's welcoming someone, a spirit, back home, and you meet people that perhaps didn't touch you in the life, but that you know well at home, and really anyone that was meaningful in the life. So as you say, Paul, they are fine. They are back at home. They will have a little rest in a hall of healing, maybe, to go through their life, and they will be peaceful. They will not have the pain or any suffering they might have experienced in their life. So as you say, that they are home and dry, literally. So yes, of course, the ones left behind, I often think of those people when you hear different events happening, and think how difficult it might be for people. I mean, with our belief, of course, if people could believe that there is something more than a physical body, that there is a spirit, and as Rosina says, that there is a reason and a purpose for all things, and that the end of our life was all written and tapestried. So of course that would help immensely, I think, with people facing the loss of somebody. I mean, for all of us here with our beliefs, it's natural to have a feeling of sadness. We miss someone, and sometimes it can be quite a shock. But my own experience, I mean, I came to the fellowship when I was quite young. So anyone that I feel I've lost who have been close to, it hasn't taken me too long to, if you like, recover. And I've bring to my mind, quite quickly, the picture of whoever it is, a family member or a close friend, perhaps lying in one of the halls of healing. And, I have the understanding and acceptance, as we all do here in the foundation, that they have returned home and they have fulfilled their tapestry. And also, I know that I will see them again. And as Marie says, the same with animals and with pets. That is quite difficult, I always feel, on the day when they are poorly and they're going home. But as soon as they've gone, I recover. I feel strong, and again I imagine them at home, and that is so helpful. Now, obviously, if you don't have the belief that there is more to life than just the one life, if you don't believe that death is not an end, then of course that is very difficult. And I'm sure it's a very individual thing, because it depends how someone has returned home at times. It depends how close you are to the person that's gone. It depends perhaps on the relationship you've had, and perhaps what sort of feelings you have remaining with you from the experience and the interaction with the person. You might have some feelings of guilt. You might feel bitter. There might be all sorts of negative feelings. Or you could, and I know that I've experienced this with somebody, you could, in a way, become quite selfish about a person going home. And really, it is difficult when you hear someone talking in this way, because you feel after a while that the person is not really talking about the person that's gone, but really it's all about themselves. And that's difficult for them, and it's something that perhaps in time they have to face up to. But again, this might be an individual situation because of the life they had with the person that's just gone. I've also been thinking about those that lose people in a very tragic way, say a child, for example. We've had a few shocking stories recently, and I imagine that must be even harder for parents and friends to get over such an event. It's perhaps a great shock when someone young goes. A parent doesn't expect to be burying their child. But of course, we know in the future, the world is going to be a much better place. It's going to be back into balance. And I'm sure in the future, when people understand about spirit, that there's more than just the physical, there's something of great value that lives on, then this whole bereavement will be very, very different. I think it will be much more a celebration of someone's life and reflecting on the memories that you have of touching a person for however long in your life, perhaps thinking about what they've taught you and perhaps what you may have taught them, and knowing, as I say, that you're going to see that person again. So I think that, like Marie says, it will be wonderful in the not so far future when people realize that death is not an end and there is a purpose to life, and the end of life was all meant to be. And the person that has returned home is absolutely fine, peaceful, acceptance within them that that was the end of their life, and one day we will see them again.
Very good. So we're coming to the end of our podcast. Bettina, would you like to say or add anything to what's been said so far, please?
I think everything has been covered very adequately by you all. It is a very personal experience and very individual. And really, all I really wanted to say was that it is something that one experiences very personally, and it would be wrong to burden other people with your sense of bereavement. I believe it is something one has to endure quietly, individually, privately, and that is how it should be. Of course, with the knowledge that you have here and many people will have in the future of spirit, where people return home to, having that understanding, then it will be so much easier for people to accept when their loved one or their friend, whoever, has returned. Of course, it will always be, while we remain on the earth as a humanoid, we will miss our closest friends and neighbors who do return to spirit. And that, of course, is right. But as I say, I believe it is a very private matter. And that's how it should remain.
The Erasmus Foundation is a spiritual teaching and healing foundation based in Laxfield, Suffolk, in the United Kingdom. We have a webpage, www.erasmus-foundation.org. If you would like to be a guest on our podcast, or indeed have further questions for us, then please contact me on paul@erasmus-foundation.org, and we'll do our best to accommodate you. Thank you very much for listening.